Hi everyone, it's John. What up? Welcome back to another video and happy Wheel of Time release week. Today we're walking through Season 3, Episode 3, Seeds of Shadow, and we're trying to find every single Easter egg we possibly can in the episode and kind of explain them to you folks. So, if you love the Wheel of Time, if you're as excited about Season 3 as I am, or if you just want to keep up on the news, consider making us your home for Wheel of Time news. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and of course, tell all of your friends. Now, since this is one of my Easter egg videos, we got to bring up the little red hand of doom here and give full book spoilers. So if you have not read the entire Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson, that's the Eye of the World through Memory of Light, be forewarned, we're going to run plot points and character arcs from the entire series, some stuff pretty late in the series as well, and we're also going to be talking about the show. So if you haven't seen the first 2 seasons and the first 3 episodes of Season 3, be forewarned, we're ruining plot points and character arcs from then as well. All right, folks, I've had a couple of comments with my last couple of Easter egg videos saying, well, you spoiled things from some of the last books. Yes, that's why I give the spoiler warning, folks. You've been warned. All right, let's bring up our Easter eggs here, and then we'll walk through them together. The cold open for this episode is probably my favorite cold open so far. I loved it more than the cold open for episode 2, and I loved it more than the cold open for episode 1. I know that's maybe a little controversial because episode 1's cold open was so crazy, there was so much going on, but this one we get to see 4 Forsaken on screen at once interacting with one another gave me chills, especially the character Sammael. Cameron Jack playing him is wild. I super love seeing him on screen, and he is right now my absolute favorite Forsaken in the show. So there's a couple things I want to reference here in this very first little Easter egg. The first is power levels. So Lanfear actively mentions power levels, and it's something that's been referenced a few times here and there in the show, but we don't really get a sense of who's stronger than who. The way she's talking about him, Malkedian is one of the weakest of them, and she's going to come after the absolute weakest of them, which is Sammael, and then she looks at Robin, then you, until she works her way up the chain until she gets to me, implying that she's more powerful than the two of them. Now, in the book series, Lanfear is very strong. She's the strongest female Forsaken, but she does not hold a candle flame to Robin. Robin is the second strongest Forsaken right behind Sammael, and his strength and power is just a hair behind him. He's almost at Rand al'Thor's level of strength, so he's almost like the dragon, and Sammael is also no joke. He is also well up there in the hierarchy of strength, and Lanfear herself is well below both of them. Now, I think this may have to do with something she does in the book series. So she carries around an Ungreal all the time in the book series, and she used it to sort of boost her power level a little bit here and there. And with that, she might be perhaps hiding her true power level from the other Forsaken. I don't know for sure if that's what they're going for here, or if they absolutely kind of turned things on its head and made the Forsaken different as far as power levels go. Which would kind of make sense because Lanfear has been sort of the central focus of the show as far as Forsaken go, and we suspect she may be around for a while. So, making her the most powerful at this point behind Sammael, I can see the show absolutely doing that. The second thing I want to talk about here is working together. Here they're talking about working together and how they're fighting each other all the time, and they can't do that anymore. This is a direct reference to pretty much every single meeting they have in the books. They always get together and they go, we can't fight anymore. We have to work together. And then they use that to try to gain advantage over the other Forsaken by pretending to work together until they can stab each other in the back. It's one of the reasons the Shadow really isn't doing as well as they should in the book series. It's because, well, let's face it, they're fighting each other as much as they're fighting the forces of the light. Next we have Sammael. Now, Cameron Jack does a wonderful job of playing this Forsaken. In fact, I would say that he is my absolute favorite Forsaken in the show. There's no doubt you can't hold a candle to this man. He's absolutely fantastic. In fact, they made him a cantankerous Scot. I love it. So he has a big scar on his face, and it's referenced a ton of times in the book series. And essentially, Lews Therin Telamon gave him this scar. So he blames Rand al'Thor because Rand al'Thor is Lews Therin reborn, and he's going to keep that scar until he kills or someone kills Lews Therin. He would rather kill Lews Therin. He's the one that wants to do it. Now, he comes from an age where healing a scar like this would be absolute easy sauce for anybody. They definitely do this, no problem, but he's refusing to have it done out of pure pride, and that is one of Sammael's, I don't want to say defining characteristics, but I think it is. He's very prideful in everything he does, and he thinks he definitely has a bit more of a leg up on the dragon than he certainly does in the book series. So this is why he still has the scar. Now, I'm talking just a bit about this. So, traveling in the show hasn't really been shown a whole lot just yet. So, we've seen Tel'aran'rhiod, where they kind of fade out into little bits. We've seen cutscenes where they move back and forth. We've seen other elements of travel, but this, I think, is the first time they really realistically show the holes in the air or people walking and stepping through them in full view. So it's been referenced before. It's been kind of, in the background, but not in absolute full view. This looks a bit different than the traveling we see from the books. So in the book series, I would say that this is true power traveling. True power traveling is described as ripping a hole in the pattern and stepping through. That's what it looks like here. It looks like an uneven, unorganized, unordered hole that they tore in space and time, and they've walked through it. That is exactly how true power traveling should work. True power is not the one power, so it's not Saidin or Saidar, it's not the male or female half the true source, it's power directly from the Dark One, which sometimes the Forsaken have access to. And we know that we've seen this in Season 2 when Lanfear heals herself from death, is she's actually accessing the true power. So we know it's a thing in the show. But the threads of it are always black. And here we're seeing different colors, little bits of blues, little bits of whites, little designs like you'd see when they're weaving something. So I don't know if they've changed up the actual act of traveling for the show to look like this instead of the square, very ordered door frames that people open up, or if this is something going to be unique to the Forsaken themselves, and that the Shadows will use this type of traveling, and then the Force of the Light, when they learn it later on, will use the door frames. I think that's probably going to be another season, maybe even 2 seasons before we start seeing that on screen. All right, now, last I want to talk about this, Moghedien and Ravin. This is a great call out to the fact that they may be trying to work together, but they'll also try to kill each other. They're very upfront and honest with that. Moghedien seems to think it's absolutely hilarious because, well, it kind of is. At least they're honest about it with one another, because this is something the Forsaken do all of the time. They scheme against each other more often than they scheme against the Force of the Light in the book series, and it just leads them to disaster every single time. All right, now we have this scene here. So this is where Nynaeve and Elayne are interrogating the Black Aja members, and a couple of name drops happen here. So they talk about Tyr, so they're still trying to push them towards Tyr. It seems like every little bit in the first 3 episodes have been pushing people to go to Tyr, go to Tyr, go to Tyr. But we've also heard a couple different things. They've mentioned Saldea, they've mentioned Mazrim Taim, the false dragon. He's mentioned again later on in this episode. So the likelihood of getting him the show, I think, is pretty high. Maybe not this season, but I think next season for sure we'll see Taim, and it will be, if I have my way about it, I would love to see them do what they did in the book series. There was a big theory about who Mazrim Taim was for a number of books until Robert Jordan found out that everybody figured it out, and then he changed up completely. I want them to do something similar for the show, and I'm actually going to do a full video on what I think they should do with that later on. But I love the name drops during this, and I like the fact that when they're interrogating them, they're both absolutely lying, and they're saying everything but the truth, which is par for the course for the book series. I love that. Something else here, blink if you miss a moment, but Nynaeve is wearing Lan's ring around her neck, and she does it for the majority of the show after he gave it to her. So you can see it underneath her accepted dress here, and I just wanted to point that out. All right, now this is something that we're not sure what it is. It's not referenced, at least that I can find, as being something specific from the book series. And I took a good long look through a bunch of different references for this, but it is a bracelet that Elaida Sedai is wearing in the show. And it's talked about a couple of times in this episode. It's zoomed in on here. You can see the snakes on this. So it is, we believe, or a lot of people online are believing that it's the Eelfinn or the Elfin bracelets. It's central to a couple of different scenes. It's mentioned when Min is talking to her later on, and it has this little kind of key charms on the bottom of it. So we're not exactly sure what it means, but I will show you this. This was put up on Sharon Gillam's Instagram. So this is a picture of Elaida, and it says Redstone Eelfinn bracelet, always worn in the right hand, very important part of costume. So we know it's something to do with the Eelfinn. We're just not entirely sure what it is just yet. But my guess is the Eelfinn are the not seen, at least so far in the show, but we've seen the red twisted stone door frame. There are Eelfinn and Elfinn. So the Eelfinn are ones that answer questions. So essentially, the Eelfinn are snake people. They give you 3 truths. You ask 3 questions, they give you those truths. I have a whole video talking about the Eelfinn and Elfinn on my explained playlist playlist here, so if you folks want to watch that, I'd highly recommend it, because I think they're going to be coming up a couple of different times in the season because of what we've seen so far. And Elaida is a seer, so she refers to herself as a seer, but she has the talent of foretelling. She's able to tell the future by saying something, and it happens a few times in the book series, and most of them are fairly important, and none of them happen exactly the way you think. So I thought it was very neat that they included this, whether it's a stylistic choice because she also does what they do and can say truths, or if it's something that she receives from them or gets from them in some way, shape, or form. I don't know, because the Fox people are the ones that give gifts. They're the other sort of otherworldly alien type race that you go through a different type of red twisted stone doorframe for. And this is referencing the truth tellers, not the gift givers. So I'm not quite sure how this is going to fit into the show, but I wanted to include it because we know it's bound to be important because of how much it's focused on. Next bit is this. Elaida is shaking. She's having a hard time here. She gets very upset. She needs some help. And that's not something that Elaida normally does within the book series. It's not something that's a part of her character. But we do know that she's under heavy amounts of compulsion from Ravin. And we know that people who have a very, very strong sense of will and a sense of self can fight compulsion. And so if you can fight compulsion, they need heavier and heavier doses of compulsion to do it. And compulsion does damage your mind in a number of different ways. It can be healed. In fact, Nynaeve does heal compulsion within the book series, and she also studies how to heal the madness. But I'm wondering if perhaps her shaking here has something to do with the fact that Ravin is using heavy, heavy amounts of compulsion on her to make him seem as if he's been in court for the last umpteen number of years. I think they mentioned about 10 years or so in the cold open, when in fact she's an Aes Sedai, can channel, and probably has a very, very strong sense of self and is probably fighting it. So seeing this, it might be the after effects of compulsion, or it could be something else they've introduced to a character this season that we're not really aware of just yet. This blink if you miss it moment, this is a moment where the Greyman is stalking Nynaeve and Elayne, and it's one of those things, I had to rewatch this a number of different times to make sure I saw it, and a few people in the comments of my review for episode 3 mentioned it, that they happened to see this, so I specifically looked for that time tag, and lo and behold, there he is. Now, the VFX supervisor for the show actually put on Twitter that there are numbers of instances of like this in the first few episodes where the Greyman is visible in the background, and not all of them have been caught yet. The Phantom has caught a fair number of them. I think he even mentioned 7 within the first episode alone. So there are a ton of times when this happens, but we haven't seen it yet. But here's one in particular where he's chasing Nynaeve and Elayne. Next we have this. We have a shot where they're in the waste, and I want to talk just a bit about this. So the Tinkers are crossing the waste. Tuath and Anan are one of the very few groups of people who can cross the waste unscathed, and they've called them the Lost Ones here a number of different times. And when they're actively looking at the wagons and looking through the destruction here, it's referencing, I believe, a scene within the book series where Tinkers went into the waste, but they ended up dying there, and they were killed by Trollocs. And the Trollocs slashed them all up with swords, and it's because they had some information they were trying to give to the Aes Sedai, or to anyone really, and it was about the Dark One breaking free. So that couples right in with this, where they're like, well, they're sword slashes, 100% sword slashes, and then Lan goes, well, no, maybe it looks a little bit like spear slashes made to look like sword slashes. So there's a little bit going on here, and they talk about the Shaido. Now, we're not sure if the Shaido are going to be Dark Friends in the show or not. It is kind of a little bit of a stretch. They've already taken the entire people of, or the leadership of the Shan and made them Dark Friends. There's a whole lot of factions within the Wheel of Time that are evil or bad that have no affiliation with the Dark One whatsoever. So I'm waiting to see how this turns out. But I wanted to mention this here too, because yes, Aviendha is a Maiden of the Spear. Yes, she is very well versed in tracking, very well versed in death, and especially in different types of wounds. But Lan is Lan. Lan is almost superhuman in his tracking ability. He's almost superhuman in his ability to understand different fighting styles and wounds. And here he is like, nope, this definitely looks like a spear that was made to look like a sword. So I thought it was very neat they included that, and I wanted to talk about that just a smidge. Now, of course, there are a number of other times that Tuath and Anan are in the waste. So it could be referencing one of those other times and not just the time when they're trying to get out and tell a prophecy. But that's the first thing I thought of when I saw this scene. All right, this such a heart-wrenching scene in the show. Perrin burying his broken ring. I talked a bit about this in my Easter egg video for a previous episode where the axe actually shattered his ring, cut it in half, and I thought it was the beginning of him actually moving on from his late wife Lila, and here we see him burying the ring in what he says is his family's plot. So. He describes it as each and every one of his family members that die are buried here with an apple seed in their hand, and it grows into apple trees. This is a direct reference to the book series. His family get out of the Two Rivers. They were helped escape by Tam and Abel Cawthon in the show. It's been referenced a couple of different times. But in the book series, they didn't make it out. They were actually killed by White Cloaks, led by Padan Fain. So Padan Fain was masquerading as Ordeth, and he killed Perrin's family. And the townsfolk found them. They buried them here under the apple trees, and it was a very, very kind of tender, sad moment with Perrin in the book series, and one of the greatest moments, I think, of the Battle of the Two Rivers. A bit different here, but in a direct reference to that, which I thought was very nice. Now we have Alana here. Alana is really kind of a different person when it comes to how she's in the book series, at least so far on screen, and I don't think that's a bad thing. Alana's character in the book series was a little bit two-dimensional, but in the show, she definitely has more depth. There's way more character depth to her, and I think what she's talking about here, she's talking about loss. So she had two warders. Her and Maxim were the fire, and then Ivan was sort of the temper to the fire. They brought them down, kept them grounded, and was the one that reined them in. I think this is referencing something that's going to happen in a later season. So for those of you who don't know, Alana is still plagued by grief of the Deathbird Warder a number of books in, and it leads her to make a very, very impulsive decision where she bonds Rand. And when she does that, it leads to a ton of very unintended consequences. So I think by referencing this here, she's actually talking about the fact that she doesn't have someone anymore to rein her in and to calm her and Maxim down and to keep them, from doing the wild, unorthodox, maybe not so smart things. So if she doesn't bond someone else prior to bonding Rand in the show, if that does happen, and I don't think we'll see it this season, we're talking a few seasons from now, I think it'll all come back to this moment where she talks about her and Maxim being the fire, and I think they're going to get more and more reckless as the show goes on because they don't have that third person to temper them, to act as a center for the two of them. And I thought that was a really neat thing that they included this when she talked about this with Perrin. Yes, a touching moment, but I think it had purpose. All right, we get introduced to Faile or Mandarb. We'll talk about Mandarb in a minute when she actually has that scene with Perrin and Lord Luke. Now, Lord Luke here is not a super integral part of this episode, and I don't believe he's playing the same part as he did in the book series. So I want to talk just a smidge about that. Way more in the breakdown video when we talk about the scenes and how things work out. But Lord Luke is an amalgamation of a couple of different people. So he is an amalgamation of Isham and Luke. So it's two people combined together, crammed together into one. And I'm going to have to do a whole video on this because he is a different type of, you don't even want to call him Shadow Spawn. He's got multiple people kind of crammed together. So he is who they call Slayer in the book series. So he's Lord Luke in the waking world, and when he goes to sleep, he enters the wolf dream and becomes Slayer, where he just slaughters wolves and does all kinds of terrible, crazy stuff. And he is one of Perrin's big enemies in the book series. Now, we get introduced to Lord Luke here. I didn't see any wolf regalia on him. I didn't see anything that may have indicated that he is doing that same role, but stands to reason that perhaps he's going to be doing some form of that Slayer role, or maybe he'll just be a dark friend in the show. Either way, Lord Luke does get introduced, and it's one of those things that I'll have to do a full breakdown of his character because he's not a traditional bad guy. He's not a traditional Shadow Spawn. He's not a traditional dark friend. He is something that is more, that was created in a more fantastical way. But yeah, very, very neat to see him introduced here in the show. And in the book series, yes, he was a hunter for the horn, hunting for the horn in the Two Rivers. That's how he showed up there, and he was the one sort of formulating the defenses against the Trollocs and the White Cloaks before Perrin showed up. And Faile was not with him. Faile traveled in with Perrin, but here she is with him because in the book series she also starts her journey as a hunter for the Horn. So it makes sense for the two of them to be together in the Two Rivers. I'm talking just a bit about this. So Matt has all these memories. And these memories stem from, we believe, blowing the Horn of Valir, some of the things that Sammael did to him, drinking the tea where he saw all his past lives, all of this other stuff that happened within the second season. And he's having a hard time with them. He's waking up in the middle of the night. He is having issues. In the book series, he does initially have some problems with some of these memories and jumbles that he has too, but he gets them in a separate way. He gets them actually from going through a redstone archway and talking to the Fox people. And he says he wants the holes in his memory filled, and they fill it with all kinds of different memories of great generals, people from the past, great warriors. And he also has very, very strong old blood. So he was, before this, speaking in the old tongue just on his own. He did have some flashes of things that were going on. He actively does, in the first book, shout out some of the war cries of past generals, just because of his lineage and what went on with him. So he gets sort of supercharged from going through the redstone doorframe, and they kind of cram all this stuff into his head. Now, he hasn't done that in the show yet, but he has blown the Horn of Valir, and he did drink that weird tea. So don't take tea from strangers, folks, from a Sammael in season 2, and he's had these problems since then. So them showing this now, I think what they're doing is they're getting out of the way all of the problems with it, because especially later on in the show when he fights Gowan and Galad, and we'll talk about that when we get there, he seems to sort of come at peace with it and be able to use it a bit. So I'm wondering if maybe this will be pretty much the end of Matt having a problem with this. Either way, it's nice that they included this. It's a nice little touch to that. All right, this scene here. This scene I wanted to include because it is a call-out to something that happened in the book series, but in a much different fashion. So Elayne was not involved in the scene, and neither was Perrin. It was Egwene and Nynaeve, and they were wandering through the novice quarters, heading to Elaine's room. And the accepted quarters, heading to Elaine's room. And when they were there, they get shot at by a Greyman with a crossbow, just like in the show, exactly like that scene in the show. They dive in a room, they come out, and then they find him stabbed in the hallway outside. Now, Sheriam Bayanar, which is the mistress of the novices, is the one that actually comes upon them. She's an Aes Sedai of the Blue Aja. She was actually in the show, too, briefly. She's the one who finds the Grey Man. She's the one who tells them they shouldn't be skulking about in the middle of the night. Go back to the rooms. Don't tell anyone about this except her and the Amyrlin. And the Amyrlin almost sounded like an afterthought. And the same line that was in the show, well, she didn't mention he was stabbed when they were talking about Perrin, happened in the book series, because Sheriam didn't mention she was stabbed, or the Grey Man was stabbed. They didn't ask about that. And what was neat about that is eventually in the book series we find out that Sheriam is a dark friend, and that likely had something to do with it or wasn't shocked about it at all. And we know that Perrin is also a dark friend. Now, a much better hidden dark friend, and for a much different reason, and I've gone over that before. In fact, I have a whole video on Perrin and being a dark friend queued up for week after next. But it was a nice swap out here. I think this was a very easy swap out, and I like that they included this scene. It was a direct reference to those scenes in the books. So people who read the book saw this and went, I know that. It's a little different, but I definitely know it. Now I want to talk just a bit about this. This is compulsion being used here on this young girl. Leandra's whole storyline within Tanchico is incredible as far as I'm concerned. I thought it was really well done, really nice, and really rounds out her character and fleshes her out and makes her more believable as a character. One of the things Jordan didn't do so well was bad guys. I mean, he did well in a number of other things, but writing the antagonists of the book series, a lot of them were bad for the sake of being bad, or they had some motivations, but they weren't really believable, and no one felt anything for them. This is a bit different. I wanted to talk about this because I think compulsion is going to become more and more of a thing, because Leandrin really craves learning that compulsion and learning a good weave of compulsion in the book series, and Malkedian is the one that is really, really good at it. I mean, she is wildly good at compulsion. Maybe not the best. Grendel, I would say, is probably the best Forsaken at compulsion. However, Malkedian is right up there. So seeing this, I think we're going to see more and more of this in the show. Now, this scene we have Min talking with Elaida, and Elaida straight up tells Min, I know why you're here, and then confides in Min afterwards. But while they're doing this, if you take a look at her room, she has red roses in the back, in full bloom. She also has some plants and whatnot. In the book series, Elaida is very, very, very partial to red roses. In fact, it's a full rose garden in the Royal Gardens in Andor. And everything they're doing here keeps showcasing Elaida with roses around her. So I think these are very nice little nods to the character itself from the book series. Now, of course, when they sit down together, this is another pretty good explanation of how just smart and conniving Elaida can be. She gains Min's trust a little bit here by talking about being seer, about the foretelling. And this is the scene actually where they reference the bracelet again. Doesn't talk about it, just reference it. Is it important? Is it a part of a foretelling? And she's like, she is one of those. But she showcases a really smart aspect inside of the character here where she tells Min, I know you're here, I know these things, but between us, because we have this special bond, don't say these things. When in fact, Elaida really wants Min to say those things to the Amberlin. And what does Min do? Of course, runs back and tells the Amberlin all these things, setting Elaida's plans in place. So, I don't think you can say that Min is the reason that Elaida becomes Amberlin, but I say that she probably helped a little bit with this scene here, because it certainly does help that her plan to get a number of things rolling, either to position herself as the head of the Red Aja or to go against Swan, started here. And in the book series, we don't get to see any of that. We don't get to see her politicking, her conniving. She just becomes Amberlin. She shows up, grabs Swan, and says, yep, you're done. We voted. I'm Amberlin now. Seeing all this on screen is pretty neat, I think. I want to showcase this because take a look in the background there. Blink if you miss it, but there are Aiel guarding. And in every scene when the Aiel are stopped, there are always Aiel guards in the background watching, because the Waste is an incredibly dangerous place. They may not be watching for shadow spawn, but they could be watching for other Aiel who could attack them for their water, and just for general things that are terrible in the Waste. The Waste is a very inhospitable place. Shadow spawn does not necessarily normally come into the Waste, but one of the things we tend to forget about in the book series when we read it is that not all evil, not all things that are going to hurt you are shadow spawn or from the Dark One. Normally it's just people that do that. So this is just one of the many instances where you see the Aiel on screen and there are a number of guards in the background kind of faded into the shadows or whatnot. Here though, I mean, they're standing on a rise in full view of everyone else. I wouldn't say that they're trying to hide the fact that they're guarding. I think they're being very out and open about this, and it's just one of those things as sort of a visual deterrence to their enemies. But nice to see either way. Now we're talking just about this. So this is the Golden Crane. So the Golden Crane is the symbol of Malkyr, and this is Melindra. So in the book series, Melindra is a Maiden of the Spear, but she is Aiel. She is not Malkyri. And she forms a relationship with Mat and ends up being a dark friend. So here we have a Malkyri woman who joined the Maidens of the Spear after Malkyr fell, and she's forming a bond with Lan. So I think what they're doing here is they're replacing Mat's storyline in the Waste, at least with Melindra, with Lan instead. Which makes sense because it is a smaller part of the storyline within the Waste, and we know that Rafe Junkins had wanted Mat to have a much bigger storyline in the Tanchico, so give you more at the forefront. So I think this is a very smart move here. And we have the Mandarb scene. This was direct pull from the books. So Faile meets Perrin in an inn, watches him just absolutely eviscerate a bunch of White Cloaks, saving an Aiel in a cage. And then later on, when she introduces herself, she calls herself Mandarb and is, just like she is in the show here, quite proud of the name because it means blade in the Old Tongue. And remember, this is the world of the Wheel of Time. Not everyone is super educated. The Old Tongue is kind of a mythical thing to a lot of people. So she knows a word of it. She's proud of it. It's Blade. It's very happy. And then he kind of snorts a bit. Lan's horse is named Blade. I think they really embodied Faile's character in this. She is doing a great job, Isabella Bukhari, as playing Faile. I love seeing her on screen. Now we have this, Min's foretelling. One of my favorite moments in this particular episode. So within the book series, Mat travels to Rhuidean. He walks through a red twisted stone doorframe, his second, because the first one he goes through in Tyr. He asks 3 questions, and they give him cryptic answers that he doesn't understand. And he gets mad, because Mat wants things very plainly. He wants to know exactly what they mean. He sees another red twisted door frame in Rhuidean when he travels in there with Rand, and he walks through it. In there, he encounters not the snake people like he did for the truths, he encounters the fox people who give gifts or boons. But there's a price to be paid. And in just Matt being Matt and getting angry, he ends up inadvertently asking for three things. A way to be rid of the one power, a way to have the holes in his memory filled, and to get out of there and go back to Rhuidean. So, and that happens, Matt is actually hung from Evan to Sora, the Tree of Life, by a rope, and that rope is attached to an Ashendari, which is sort of like a sword spear, I guess. It's like a sword blade in the end of a spear, and he intuitively just knows how to use it from all the memories that were crammed into his head. So out of that, he got the sword spear. He got out of the Fox's realm back to Rhuidean. He got the holes in his memory filled with scenes of generals and battles, and he got the Foxhead Medallion, which allows him to not be channeled at. He doesn't like being channeled at. He doesn't like the one power touching him. So any weaves that go near him kind of melt around that thing. So Min having this vision in front of a red twisted stone door frame is pretty much a guarantee that we're going to see Matt go through this door frame at some point or another. And he's hanging here, and he's hanging from something. My guess is could be possibly an Ashendari, could be his weapon, or could just be hanging. Either way, he does get hung as he comes out, which is just like the book series. So there is hope, considering the fact that we've seen in all the promotional material that Matt is wearing a Foxhead Medallion, that Matt gets that Foxhead Medallion, gets his Ashendari this season, and does go through the red twisted stone door frame. So really neat little call out here, and I think we're going to see that this season. Now, I have to include a scene of Galad White Knighting. He is the perfect embodiment of the character as far as I'm concerned. In the book series, he does what is right all of the time, regardless of how much it hurts people, or regardless of how much of an asshole it makes him look. He just does what he believes is right, no matter what. He is all just cold logic when it comes to that. And he does it here with Min. He does it again later on with Nynaeve, which forces a fight between Matt and the two of them. It was just a treat to see this on screen. But yeah, this is Galad. This is what he does. He white knights everybody all the time and just thinks that he knows better. And he's not doing it to make himself look good. He's not doing it because he feels like it's going to be anything other than the right thing to do. Now here we have Lyanna walking in, and like I said earlier, Elaida did that whole thing with Min, and this is the culmination of it right here. Lyanna coming in and saying, hey, guess what? All your red sisters, get out. You need to go away. You need to take care of this false dragon in Saldea. You need to take care of Mazrim Taim, which, again, another name drop I'm super happy for. I think we'll see him at some point in the series. But this is just Elaida maneuvering everything behind the scenes. There's a lot of politics in this episode, and I live for every moment of it. I really love that. In here, we get to see Perrin being Ta'veren. So it's something that actually a few people who watched the show but have not read the books asked me to talk about. They said, well, Perrin came out and said a couple words, and then everyone was like, yeah, we're going to do exactly what you said, even though it's the opposite of what we think we should do. That happened in the book series. Essentially, his Ta'verenness took over and melded the pattern around him. He needs these people to stay here. He needs these people to band together to fight. His journey requires it. So the pattern goes, okay, we're going to do that because it's what you need. That's what Ta'veren does. They twist and bend the pattern around them, maybe not to exactly what they want, but what they need. And this is exactly what we saw in this scene. A few words from him, everyone in the town went, all right, cool beans, let's do exactly what you think. And I thought that was really neat. Now, in our final scene of the tower storyline in this episode, we get to see Matt fight Gowan and Galad. And of course, it's because Galad was white knighting Nynaeve here, saying, oh, you need to get away from him, miss. Like, are you okay? And Nynaeve's like, I don't need any help. Of course Nynaeve needs no help. She is an incredibly strong character, and if she really needed to, she'd probably thump the crap out of Matt with a stick and he'd take it. But we get to see the scene from the books. Now, in the book series, Matt Cawthon is sickly. He's just healed from the dagger. He's watching them show off. So the earlier scene that we've seen in episode 2, where Gowan and Galad are showing off, that's where this happens. And then he's kind of scoffing at it, and someone makes a remark, and he makes a bet with one of the water instructors that he could take the two of them, and then he makes the bet with them. And then he does. He beats the living crap out of them, just like he does here. But one of the things he does here is he centers himself first. And this is why I want to talk about this as an Easter egg. He leans down, he puts a staff on his head, takes a few deep breaths, and as soon as he does that, his entire demeanor changes. His stance changes, the way he breathes changes, the way he moves, the way he looks at things, all changes. He is 100%, there's no doubt in my mind, channeling his memories in order to become the Matt who can beat the crap out of them with the staff. Now, that is to say that Matt isn't good with the staff in the book series. He totally is. But when he fights Galad and Galad for the first time, he is himself surprised at how well it went. So I'm wondering if that's what this is right here. Now, in the final couple shots here, we have a couple things I want to talk about. So here we have the Black Aja in Tenchico, and this is probably a better shot of it right here. Yeah. We have the white alabaster figure, which is one of the Dreamweavers from the book series, and we have the Domination Bands. Now, the Domination Bands, of course, as they mention here, is a male Adam that can control the Dragon Reborn, and that's why they're getting it. Same as in the book series, part of the reason why they're in Tenchico is they're looking for this thing. But I like the little call-outs to this. We see also in the back there, just over the white alabaster figure, that black fluted rod that creates balefire, or we believe creates balefire. It's the exact description of the same one from the book series. So just strewn about this room are all these objects of power, and they're just kind of there. They're just hanging out. And we get to see Naomi studying them. Just because she's now Black Aja does not change her entire personality. She is still, in some ways, shapes and forms, a Brown Aja member, still likes to do research, still is trying to figure things out. She's just also inherently evil at this point. Cool to see. All right, like my other Easter egg videos, these are not all of them. I'm sure there are plenty of them that I am missing, or at least a couple I'm missing. So if you see any or you're aware of any, let me know in the comments down below. At the end of the season, when all 8 episodes are out, I'll dig through all of the comments. I'll try to find all the Easter eggs that I can, and then I will add them to a video, all the Easter eggs I missed. So if you're doing that comment, write Easter egg out. Like, write the words Easter egg. It makes it a lot easier for me to search the comments at the end of the season for Easter egg. I'll just Control F, and I can find every comment that says Easter egg. So if you find some Easter eggs that I missed or you've seen somewhere else, let me know in the comments down below, and I will certainly add them to a video at the end of the season. Now, tomorrow we're coming down to my breakdown video where we really go in depth in this episode and talk about all the differences between the show plots and the book plots and how they're different or the same or changed. And those videos tend to be pretty popular with show watchers, specifically because if you haven't read the books, it's nice to know where everything comes from. That brings us to Tuesday, and then Wednesday we'll likely have a What Wednesday reveal. So on Wednesday we'll have a news video with all the news from everything that's going on, plus anything they release for What Wednesday. And then likely we'll do a second video on Wednesday detailing the next episode, what we're going to see, because there is that little tidbit at the end of this episode showcasing the coming up in episode 4, which is the Road to the Spear. That's a big one, folks. That is going to be one of the best episodes this season. I don't want to tell you my score that I gave it during my reviews, but it's one of the best episodes this season. You're in for a treat next week. I can't wait until everyone else can see Road to the Spear because it is phenomenal. So yeah, and so then, of course, review, Easter egg video, and breakdown, all for the Road to the Spear. That's going to be followed up with any news that we've missed, the episode 5 preview, and then at that point we'll have time to either add in a couple of my videos that I have on deck here. So I have a video on Perrin, I have a video on different objects of power, I have a video on Slayer / Lord Luke, I have a video on a number of different things that are good to know for this season, and we're going to talk about those. So you'll get a video every single day from me, at least, folks, right from now until the end of the show. And then at the end of the show, after the 8th episode airs, you'll get a few days of videos from me, but then I'm going to be traveling. So I am at JordanCon this year. So those of you who are going to be at JordanCon, look for me and my wife. We'll be giving out some ribbons, some stickers, and just generally saying hi to everybody and hanging out. It's going to be a good time, I think. So thank you all for sticking with me here to the very end. Here's to many more.